The day started like any other. The hotel was a well-oiled machine, its rhythm familiar and comforting. The smell of freshly polished wood and the crisp, clean scent of linen sheets filled the air. I moved from room to room, fluffing pillows and tucking in sheets, each action almost automatic. I was deep in thought, my mind wandering to the evening ahead. Mr. Warren, my most generous admirer, was due to arrive later that day. The anticipation of his visit brought a small smile to my lips. He always brought gifts, luxurious, expensive things that made me feel special and envied. But my daydream was abruptly interrupted by the sound of Rosie's stern voice. "Adelina, I need to speak with you," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. I turned to see her standing in the doorway of the room I was tidying. Rosie was the senior maid at the hotel, a woman who had seen it all and wasn't afraid to speak her mind. Her gray hair was pulled back into a tight bun, and her face, lined with years of hard work, was set in a frown. I followed her to the break room, feeling a mix of irritation and curiosity. As the door closed behind us, Rosie turned to face me, her expression serious. "You need to be more careful, Adelina," she began, her voice low but firm. "Your behavior with the guests, especially Mr. Warren, is becoming a problem." I rolled my eyes, crossing my arms over my chest. "Rosie, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just enjoying my life. Why should I be judged for that?" Rosie's eyes narrowed, and she took a step closer. "Mr. Warren is a married man. You're playing with fire, Adelina. This will not end well." I met her gaze defiantly. "That's his problem, not mine. I'm not forcing him to do anything. Besides, I have a right to my personal life and my freedom." Rosie shook her head, her expression a mix of disappointment and concern. "Your actions have consequences, even if you don't see them now. Please, Adelina, think about what you're doing." I felt a surge of frustration. "I appreciate your concern, Rosie, but I know what I'm doing. I can handle myself." Rosie sighed, her shoulders sagging slightly. "I've seen this before, Adelina. You might think you're in control, but these things have a way of spiraling out of control. You're smart and capable. You don't need to rely on men like Mr. Warren." I shook my head, determined to stand my ground. "I know what I'm doing, Rosie. I'm not some naive girl who needs to be protected. I can handle myself." Rosie's eyes softened, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something in her gaze. Fear, perhaps, or regret. "Just promise me you'll be careful. That's all I'm asking." I sighed, feeling a twinge of guilt for my defiance. "Fine, Rosie. I'll be careful." But as I left the break room and returned to my duties, I pushed Rosie's warnings to the back of my mind. Her words might have come from a place of experience, but I wasn't ready to listen. Not yet. The rest of the day passed in a blur of routine tasks, my mind drifting back to the upcoming evening and Mr. Warren's visit. Rosie's concerns seemed distant and unimportant compared to the excitement that awaited me. Little did I know, her words would soon take on a weight I couldn't ignore. Mr. Warren arrived at the hotel every few weeks, his presence always heralded by an air of sophistication and wealth. Tall and distinguished, with a touch of gray at his temples, he carried himself with the confidence of a man who knew he was admired. His visits brought a thrill to my otherwise monotonous days, and I found myself eagerly anticipating our encounters. That afternoon, as I stood in the lobby polishing the already gleaming banister, I saw him walk through the revolving doors. He caught my eye and gave me a discreet nod, a silent promise of the evening to come. My heart raced with excitement. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the city lights began to twinkle, I made my way to Mr. Warren's suite. I knocked softly, and the door opened almost immediately. He stood there, a smile on his lips, and beckoned me inside. "Adelina," he said warmly, taking my hand and leading me into the opulent room. "It's so good to see you again." I returned his smile, feeling a rush of pleasure at his attention. "It's good to see you too, Mr. Warren." He handed me a beautifully wrapped box, the latest in a series of extravagant gifts. I opened it to find a delicate gold bracelet, its design intricate and undoubtedly expensive. "It's beautiful," I breathed, my fingers tracing the delicate metalwork. "Only the best for you," he replied, lifting my hand to his lips and kissing it gently. "You deserve it." We spent the evening in each other's company, talking and laughing, as though we were old friends. He told me stories of his travels and his business ventures, painting a picture of a life filled with luxury and excitement. I soaked up every word, imagining myself in that world. As the night wore on, he pulled me close and whispered, "You make my visit here so much more enjoyable, Adelina. I don't know what I'd do without you." His words sent a thrill through me, and I leaned into his embrace, feeling a sense of validation and importance that I craved. The next morning, as I returned to my duties, my colleagues were quick to notice the new bracelet adorning my wrist. Maria, one of the younger maids, couldn't contain her curiosity. "Adelina, that's stunning," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with admiration. "Is it from Mr. Warren?" I nodded, a smile playing on my lips. "Yes, he gave it to me last night. Isn't it beautiful?" Maria sighed, a hint of envy in her voice. "You're living the dream, Adelina. How do you do it?" I shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "You just have to know how to play the game, Maria. Confidence and a bit of charm go a long way." But beneath my confident exterior, Rosie's warning still lingered in the back of my mind. I pushed it aside, convincing myself that I was in control, that I knew what I was doing. After all, Mr. Warren was generous and attentive, and I was enjoying the benefits of his affection. As I continued with my tasks, the admiration of my colleagues fueled my determination. I wasn't content with fleeting affairs and expensive gifts. I wanted more. I wanted to find a wealthy husband, someone who could lift me out of this life and give me the luxury I craved. The hotel's elite clientele presented the perfect opportunity. That evening, as I sat in the staff lounge with Maria and a few others, the conversation inevitably turned to relationships and the wealthy guests we served. "You're so lucky, Adelina," Maria said, her voice tinged with longing. "I wish I had your charm." "It's not just about charm," I replied, leaning back in my chair. "You have to be smart, know what you want, and go after it." Another maid, Sophia, chimed in. "But isn't it risky? I mean, Mr. Warren is married. What if his wife finds out?" I waved off her concern. "That's his problem, not mine. Besides, it's not like I'm forcing him to do anything. He comes to me because he wants to." The others nodded, though I could see a mix of admiration and uncertainty in their eyes. They envied my boldness, but they also feared the potential consequences. For now, though, I was riding high on the thrill of my affair and the allure of the gifts and attention. As the days passed, I found myself thinking more and more about the future. I began to dream of a life beyond the hotel, a life filled with luxury and comfort. I was determined to find a way to make those dreams a reality, even if it meant taking risks. Little did I know, the path I was on would soon lead me to a crossroads, where I would have to confront the reality of my choices and the potential consequences they carried. The days blurred into a familiar rhythm of work and anticipation, my thoughts frequently drifting to Mr. Warren and the luxurious gifts he showered upon me. My colleagues continued to watch me with a mixture of envy and admiration, and I reveled in the attention. However, Rosie's stern warnings never completely left my mind, though I pushed them aside as best I could. One evening, as the sun set and the hotel's corridors grew quieter, Rosie approached me with an uncharacteristic hesitance. She looked tired, her usual stern expression softened by something I couldn't quite place. "Adelina, can we talk?" she asked, her voice softer than usual. Curious and somewhat intrigued, I nodded. "Of course, Rosie. What's on your mind?" We found a quiet corner in the staff lounge, away from prying eyes and ears. Rosie sat down heavily, as if the weight of her years was finally catching up to her. I took a seat opposite her, sensing that this was going to be more than just another lecture. "Adelina," she began, her eyes fixed on the table between us. "I wasn't always like this, you know. I had a life, a family. Once." I leaned in, genuinely interested. "What happened, Rosie?" She sighed deeply, as if steeling herself to relive painful memories. "I had a husband, Andres. He was everything to me. We had a son, a beautiful boy named Luis. We were happy, or so I thought." Her eyes glazed over, and I could see she was looking back into the past, reliving it. "But Andres, he fell into an affair with an older woman named Sarai. She was wealthy, alluring, and she took him away from us. The affair tore our family apart. Andres left, and I was left to pick up the pieces." I felt a pang of sympathy for her. "That must have been so hard, Rosie. I can't even imagine." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "It was. But the worst part was losing Luis. He couldn't handle the separation. He grew distant, angry. One night, he ran away and got into an accident. He didn't make it. A lump formed in my throat as I listened to her. Rosie, the tough, unyielding woman I had always known, was now a grieving mother sharing her deepest pain. "I'm so sorry, Rosie," I said softly. "I had no idea." Rosie wiped away a tear, her voice trembling. "That's why I'm so hard on you, Adelina. I don't want you to go through what I did. These affairs, they lead to nothing but pain and destruction." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had always dismissed Rosie's warnings as outdated and irrelevant, but hearing her story made me see her in a new light. She wasn't just trying to control me, she was trying to protect me. "I understand now, Rosie," I said quietly. "I really do." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and sadness. "I just don't want you to make the same mistakes, Adelina. You have so much potential. Don't waste it on something that will only bring heartache." I nodded, feeling a newfound respect for her. "Thank you for sharing your story with me, Rosie. It means a lot." Rosie reached across the table and took my hand in hers. "Just promise me you'll think about what I've said. That's all I ask." "I promise," I said, squeezing her hand. "I'll think about it." As we sat there in silence, I felt a bond forming between us, a connection born from shared vulnerability. Rosie's story had touched me deeply, and for the first time, I began to question the path I was on. The gifts and attention from Mr. Warren suddenly seemed less glamorous, tainted by the potential for heartbreak and destruction. That night, as I lay in bed, Rosie's words echoed in my mind. I knew I had a choice to make, and it wasn't going to be easy. But for the first time, I felt the stirrings of a desire for something more, something real and lasting, freed from the shadows of deceit and betrayal. Little did I know, Rosie's story would be the catalyst for a profound change in my life, setting me on a new path toward a future I had never imagined. Rosie's story haunted me for days, lingering in my mind like a persistent shadow, her pain, her loss. It was all so raw and real. I couldn't shake the image of her tear-streaked face as she recounted the tragedy that had befallen her family. The excitement I once felt about Mr. Warren's visits was now tinged with a growing unease. One afternoon, as the hotel buzzed with the usual activity, I was folding laundry in the back room when Rosie walked in. Her presence seemed to fill the small space, her eyes more serious than usual. "Adelina," she began, her voice softer, but still carrying that familiar edge, "I need to talk to you." I put down the shirt I was folding and turned to face her. "What is it?" "Rosie." She took a deep breath, as if preparing herself for what she was about to say. "I know you're enjoying the attention and gifts from Mr. Warren, but you have to understand the risks involved." I frowned, feeling defensive. "I'm not doing anything wrong, Rosie. It's all just fun." Rosie shook her head, her eyes filled with concern. "That's what I thought too, once. But look where it got me. You're young, Adelina, and you have your whole life ahead of you. Don't let a married man ruin that for you." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "I'm not like you, Rosie. I can handle this." She stepped closer, her expression earnest. "I know you think you can. But these things have a way of spiraling out of control. Saray's betrayal destroyed my family. Andres never recovered from losing Louis. He spiraled into depression, and last I heard, he's living alone, a shadow of the man he once was." Her words sent a chill down my spine. I could see the truth in her eyes, the pain of her past etched deeply into her soul. "I'm sorry, Rosie. I didn't realize." Rosie placed a hand on my arm, her grip firm. "I just want you to see that there's a better way. You're smart and capable. You can do so much more with your life than get involved in these affairs." I felt a lump in my throat as I looked at her. "But what else is there for me, Rosie? This hotel. It's all I know." "There's so much more," she replied, her voice filled with conviction. "Education, a career, a future where you don't have to rely on men like Mr. Warren for validation and security." I was silent for a moment, absorbing her words. The idea of a different future was both daunting and tantalizing. "I don't know where to start." Rosie's expression softened, and she smiled gently. "The first step is to believe that you can do it. The rest will follow. And I'll help you, Adelina. You don't have to do this alone." Her offer of support touched me deeply. For the first time, I saw a way out of the cycle I had fallen into. "Thank you, Rosie. That means a lot." She squeezed my arm, her eyes warm with encouragement. "You're stronger than you think, Adelina. I believe in you." As she left the room, I felt a newfound sense of determination. Rosie's story and her warnings had finally broken through my defenses. I knew I couldn't continue down the path I was on. It was time to make a change. That evening, I found myself standing outside Mr. Warren's suite, the usual anticipation replaced by a sense of resolve. I knocked on the door, and he opened it with his usual charming smile. "Adelina, come in," he said, reaching out to take my hand. I stepped back, shaking my head. "I can't, Mr. Warren. Whatever this is, it has to stop." His smile faltered, confusion clouding his eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I can't do this anymore," I said firmly. "I deserve more than to be someone's secret. I deserve a real future." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I understand. I'll respect your decision, Adelina." "Thank you," I replied, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. As I walked away from his suite, I felt a strange sense of freedom. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready to take control of my life. Rosie's words had given me the courage to face the uncertainty and strive for something better. The next morning, I went to the hotel's manager and asked for information on educational opportunities. I wanted to pursue further education, to build a career that didn't rely on fleeting affairs and the generosity of others. My colleagues were surprised by my sudden change, but I didn't care. I had a new goal, a new direction. Rosie's story had opened my eyes to the emptiness of my current lifestyle, and I was determined to create a better future for myself. Rosie watched my transformation with a mix of pride and relief. She continued to offer her guidance and support, and I found myself growing closer to her. She became more than just a colleague. She was a mentor, a friend. As I walked through the hotel's grand halls, I felt a sense of purpose and determination. I was no longer chasing after fleeting thrills. I was building a future, one that I could be proud of. And it was all thanks to Rosie, who had shared her story and shown me the way. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of direction and purpose. I enrolled in evening classes at the local community college, focusing on hospitality management, a field where I already had experience but wanted to deepen my knowledge and skills. Rosie's support was unwavering, and her encouragement bolstered my resolve. One afternoon, as I was tidying up the hotel's grand lobby, Rosie approached me with a warm smile. "How are the classes going, Adelina?" I looked up from my work, a smile spreading across my face. "They're going great, Rosie. It's challenging, but I'm learning so much." Rosie nodded approvingly. "I'm proud of you. You've taken a big step, and it's not easy. But I can see the change in you already." I felt a rush of gratitude for her words. "Thank you, Rosie. I couldn't have done it without your support." She placed a hand on my shoulder, her eyes filled with warmth. "You did the hard part, Adelina. You made the decision to change your life. I'm just here to help you along the way." Our conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Mr. Warren. He entered the lobby, his presence as commanding as ever. But this time, I felt no flutter of excitement. Instead, I felt a sense of calm and clarity. "Adelina," he greeted me with a polite nod. "May I speak with you for a moment?" I exchanged a glance with Rosie, who gave me a reassuring nod. "Of course, Mr. Warren," I replied, stepping aside to speak with him privately. He looked at me with a mixture of regret and respect. "I wanted to apologize for putting you in a difficult position. I never intended to cause you any harm." I met his gaze, feeling a sense of closure. "Thank you, Mr. Warren. I appreciate that, but I've moved on. I'm focusing on my future now." He smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I understand. I wish you all the best, Adelina." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving me with a sense of finality. It was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. That evening, as I sat in my evening class, I felt a sense of accomplishment. I was surrounded by other students, each of us striving to improve our lives and reach our goals. The professor, a seasoned professional in the hospitality industry, spoke passionately about the importance of excellent service and management. During a break, I chatted with a fellow student named Elena, who was also working in a hotel while pursuing her education. We shared stories about our experiences and dreams for the future. "So what made you decide to go back to school?" Elena asked, curiosity in her eyes. I hesitated for a moment, then decided to share. I realized that I was relying too much on other people for my happiness and security. I wanted to take control of my life and create a future I could be proud of. Elena nodded thoughtfully. "I get that. It's not easy, but it's worth it. It is, I agreed, and having people who believe in you makes a big difference. Rosie's face flashed in my mind, and I smiled. Her support had been invaluable, and I knew I was on the right path. As the weeks turned into months, I continued to work hard, balancing my job at the hotel with my studies. Rosie's encouragement never wavered, and our bond grew stronger. She shared more of her life experiences, offering wisdom and advice that guided me through the challenges I faced. One evening, after a particularly long day, Rosie and I sat in the staff lounge, enjoying a rare moment of quiet. "Adelina," she began, her tone serious yet gentle, "I want you to know how proud I am of you. You've come a long way." I looked at her, feeling a surge of emotion. "Thank you, Rosie. I couldn't have done it without you." She shook her head, smiling. "You had it in you all along. You just needed to see it for yourself." As I prepared to leave the lounge, Rosie handed me a small wrapped package. "What's this?" I asked, surprised. "Open it," she replied, her eyes twinkling with anticipation. I carefully unwrapped the package to find a beautiful leather-bound journal. Inside there was an inscription, "For Adelina," to document the journey of a remarkable young woman. "With love, Rosie." Tears filled my eyes as I looked at her. "Rosie, this is beautiful. Thank you." She hugged me tightly, her voice filled with emotion. "You have a bright future ahead of you, Adelina. Never forget that." That night, as I sat in my small apartment, I opened the journal and began to write. I documented my journey, my dreams, and my aspirations. The pages filled with my hopes for the future, each word a testament to the strength I had found within myself. As the months passed, I completed my studies and earned my degree in hospitality management. The day I received my diploma, Rosie was there, cheering me on with pride in her eyes. It was a moment of triumph, a new beginning that symbolized the culmination of my hard work and determination. With my newfound qualifications, I secured a position as an assistant manager at a prestigious hotel. It was the opportunity I had dreamed of, a chance to build a career and create a future filled with possibilities. Rosie's story had been a warning, but it had also been a source of inspiration. Her courage and resilience had shown me the importance of choosing a path that led to true fulfillment and happiness. As I stood in my new office, overlooking the bustling city below, I felt a sense of accomplishment and gratitude. I had come a long way from the maid who sought validation in the wrong places. I had found my own strength, my own direction, and I was ready to embrace the future with confidence. And it all began with a warning, a story of pain and loss that had opened my eyes and changed my life forever. Rosie had given me more than advice. She had given me the gift of believing in myself, and for that, I would be forever grateful.